Welcome to the Mason Cox Show. It's so good to have you on as a listener. We're so excited for you to be part of the community. And as with any new community, we're looking to grow this thing. So like, share, comment, all the good stuff. And we've got an amazing person on for our first episode, Dylan Buckley, who has the Dylan Friends podcast. He's got Producy, his own agency that he's made out of this thing. He's done some pretty amazing things in life. So we talk about his stuff from football, mental health advocacy. We talk about his whole thing, how he trained for a marathon in 8 weeks, insane, and much, much more. So listen in. It's going to be a great show, and we're so excited to have you as a listener. All right, everyone, welcome to the Mason Cox Show. Now, this is the first episode. Pretty stoked about this. And we've got the OG of podcasting, Mr. Dylan Buckley. You've got an amazing career in AFL. You've got 41 games to your name, 8 seasons between GWS and Carlton. But more importantly, you've got the number one sports podcast on Spotify in Australia with over 120 episodes, 4.5 million downloads, 100,000 plus followers on Instagram. And you've absolutely killed it, man. You're the OG, like I said, of podcasting, and I'm so impressed by what you've been able to do transitioning out of football. And welcome to the Mason Cox Show.
Firstly, welcome. Thank you. It's incredible to be here. First episode means a lot. I'm going to fact check you on a few things. You said, firstly, you said amazing career, and you said 41 games, amazing career. Now, I don't know your humour that well yet, but I'm assuming you're taking the piss. Secondly, you said 4.5 million. That was maybe about 6 months ago. We're about 6 million.
We're at 6 million now.
So just to make sure those stats are there.
Well, I did a bit of research on you, man. I'm gonna start this off because I actually went on Wikipedia, as you do. The first thing you do. You go on Wikipedia. Yes, everything is 100% true on Wikipedia. So I'm going to quote a few things from you. You've apparently... Your height is 120 centimeters, just 3 foot 11 inches. Your weight is 2 kilos and 4 pounds for those Americans out there. Your position is emergency or doggy. Is what it says.
Doggy.
Yeah, doggy. That's essentially it. And you've played you've kicked 999 goals in your career. And one of the best quotes I thought was, he was described by Carlton recruiting manager Wayne Hughes as a quick midfielder with excellent disposal skills. Which that was proven wrong. It's literally the quote.
Oh my god!
In Wikipedia about you. So it is quite an amazing thing to have you on here, man. I'm so excited to actually interview you. It's you've got one of the most unique stories. I feel like you've had an interesting career in AFL, and you've been able to, I guess, transition from AFL into a career of podcasting, which is something I think everyone admires you for. And it's something you should be very proud of, I think. And it's something that no one else has done. I think you've transitioned from football into the media industry quite just better than anyone else that I really know. And you're doing things with the AFL now. You're doing your own podcast. You've got 3 or 4 different shows on there, and you're starting your own production company. Feel free to shout them out.
Producy.
Yeah. And it's pretty amazing what you're doing with Dylan Friends, mate. And it's a credit to you. But I kind of want to get to know you a bit better. Sure. I know, obviously, you're behind the mic, probably interviewing other people and telling their stories. But I want to get to know more about what your story is personally. And it might feel a bit weird because you're usually probably the ones asking questions. But I'm going to reverse this. I'm going to be the one asking questions. You're going to be the one answering them. So we'll start off a bit of how the podcast started. I know we can talk about AFL and things along that, and I'll probably get into it. But I want to know, I guess, how the podcast started. I know, obviously, you had Josh from GWS Days as your first episode, which I listened to, which was kind of crazy how far you've been able to come and how many episodes you've kind of been able to branch off and do since then. But what was the main reason you started podcasting? It was before really podcasting was a big deal, I guess.
Yeah. So, I suppose the stories are pretty intertwined with the career as well. But firstly, thank you for all those very kind words. Very, very nice of you to hear, and love hearing that. So started the podcast. Okay, so I'd have to go back probably 5-6 years ago. I was playing with Carlton Footy Club. And my career was awesome. I absolutely loved my time in footy, but it was a really stressful time for me. It was something where I loved playing footy, I really, really loved it, but I struggled with the identity of being known as a footballer, and that was something that I just didn't love because, if I played a good game, I was a good person. If I played a bad game, I was a bad person. And I hated that. And I was like, well, fuck, I just wish that I could be sort of known maybe more as just like Dylan Buckley the person versus Dylan Buckley the footballer. This is a long-winded answer, I'm sorry, but I'll keep going. So I was at Carlton. I did, 2 one-year deals at Carlton, and it came to the end of that going like you probably weren't going to get another deal. But through that whole time, I'd always had a really keen eye on what was next and trying to find something that I really enjoyed, because a really big fear for me was going, look, I love playing footy. I don't want to be defined as it, but also I don't really have any passions outside of footy. And I hope that one day when I leave, I'm not that guy that sits in the pub and says, oh, I shoulda, coulda, woulda done this. So through that, I got a big shout out to Carlton media team. There's a guy named Luca Ganano there who's an OG in just digital media in general, and he wanted me to start the show called Discussions with Dylan, where I'd sit down with teammates and sort of interview players, and end up getting delisted from Carlton a couple of years later. Loved doing that, and that was a really scary time. I know we you had a chat with me on your podcast about when maybe careers nearly to and fro come to when you don't know what's next, and that scared the absolute shit out of me. Like I remember being at home. And I remember like having a mortgage. My my now wife and my mum were actually living with me at the time, and I was, having to pay a mortgage and just had no idea where the next paycheck was going to come. And I remember thinking, fuck, if I get another chance to play footy, I'm never going to waste that opportunity again, and I want to sort out more my off field rather than on field. So for me, fortunately, was lucky enough to get picked up by the Giants, and lucky for me, that was great. Unluckily for them, you could say it didn't probably pan out the best it should on field. But
2 games, 2 goals for the club.
2 games, 2 goals, 2 omissions. But 2 of the best years of my life, 2 years where I really, really found myself. I know that sounds a bit cringy, but similar to nowhere near as big a move as your story. But I was a mama's boy. I'd grown up in the same area my whole life, lived at home. Went to school 10 minutes down the road, played at a club where my father played for. So I was in this insular bubble without even knowing it, and had like really good friends. And when I left to go to Sydney, it was the biggest thing that ever happened, because I'd never, ever thought I would live away from Melbourne. And I was there, and it was a point for me, and I realised like if I need to do something with my life, like I have to do it myself, and no one else can do it for me. Not trying to dramatise the story at all, but there was points where I was like, fucking hell, what am I going to do? So I ended up trying to get into radio, went to a couple of radio stations in Sydney. One radio station I'll never forget, it was the worst experience I've ever been to in my life. I literally sat there, I went there at like breakfast radio, sat there at 4 a.m. till 7 a.m. and just did not say one word. But they just didn't even speak to me. So I was like, you know what, stuff this. I've been listening to crime podcasts, and I was listening to this podcast called Serial.
Yeah,
actually,
great podcast.
US podcast called Serial, which is a murder podcast. Adnan Zaid was the first serial podcast, and this was really new into podcasting. Like I'm talking maybe 2017, when like people had the app on their phone, but no one even knew what it did.
The purple iTunes app.
The purple, everyone just like moved. You couldn't delete it. Everyone just kept like moving it like off screen. And I used to listen to that podcast heaps and a lot of other crime podcasts. And I was like, fuck, maybe what I should do instead of, not knowing what to do post footy, I'll sit down, I'll do a podcast, I'll do like 8 episodes interviewing my teammates. So then if I finish footy at the end of the year, I'll be able to take that to a radio station and say like, I've done something, and like, can you employ me? Like I'll come work for you. At least I've done something. Other like, the last time I was asking for jobs and they're like, well, where's your experience?
It's like a resume builder.
Yeah, like a resume builder. Exactly that. And that's how it all started.
That's crazy, man. It's kind of interesting because I guess nowadays, like, it's kind of weird to think, but almost every like team has a podcast of essentially what you were the original of doing, and podcasting, interviewing everyone else. I know Adzi Trelawney's got one of starting this one myself, and I'm not necessarily doing teammates, but it's just so kind of crazy how you probably didn't realize how big this was going to become. Did you ever kind of have the idea whenever you first started? Was it just kind of like, oh, I need to put some effort and time away from footy just to clear my mind, have a different passion to go to? And then things like, what were the kind of, I guess, breakthrough moments where you're like, okay, this is actually like getting a lot more traction than I thought, and this might actually turn into a full-time gig? Yeah,
well, I've always had a lot of respect for players like yourself, and even like Adam Treloar and Josh Dunkley and Mitch Robinson, and guys that are on AFL lists that are, you've got good contracts and you've been on AFL lists, and they still put in this work. Because for me, the biggest factor was like, I knew that my time in footy was imminently closing. And it was more, I'd love to say that I had this entrepreneurial growth that I was keen to explore outside of footy. But the cold hard facts was, if I didn't work something out, I was going to have no job. And that's like, nearly the podcast came out of fear.
Yeah.
And it came out of like going, you need to get your life together, really. Like you need to work out what you want to do and work it out. So it wasn't like I had this passion, which, that came later when I started doing it, but it was more out of like a fear of you're not going to have anything
unknown.
else. Yeah, the unknown. I was like, fuck, I need to do something. But it's funny because when I was younger, and you talk about being one of the first to do this stuff, like I couldn't get a job on radio, I couldn't get a job with Channel 7 or anything. I played 41 games. Like who wants to hear a 41 gamer's opinion on things when there's Brownlow medalists giving stuff? So I think my biggest thing for that was like I wanted to be a voice for probably the 80% of players that don't get to do those things and don't get to experience the highs of footy, but they actually experience the highs and the lows. And that was a really big thing. And for me as well, being a young guy, I really used to care a lot about what people thought of me. Like I was really maybe not self-conscious, but if people were like, oh, that's stupid, I was like, oh yeah, okay, I won't do it. But as soon as I got to the Giants, and you speak about culture and people, I'd never met, and this isn't like having a go at Carlton or anything, but it's probably just the time we're at where if you did something, you were shut down and you were
old school footy mentality.
Old school footy mentality. And then when I got to the Giants, I didn't even know these guys, and I was like, oh, I'm going to start a podcast, and they were like, mate, that's awesome, that's the best idea, like what do you want us to do? We'll support you, we'll do this. So it's like as soon as I got out of Melbourne, got away from my support networks and put myself under that pressure and surrounded myself with incredible people, like my life started to change, which was really, really special.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. And like you talk about the early days. I remember I actually watched a video, a bit of research on your deal.
Yep.
And I watched a video and I couldn't help but laugh whenever it told me that you like at the end of your career, right? The AFLPA has this, kind of like, I guess, gathering of all the players that are retired.
Yeah.
And like, it's like, oh, what's next, kind of thing. And I remember you took a survey, and what came out of the survey was you're most suited to become a blacksmith or a florist.
I know.
And to think where you're at now is like absolutely hilarious. I remember seeing that and being like, can you imagine yourself as a blacksmith? I don't even know if they still exist, to be honest.
No, I don't know if they do either. I remember those camps though, but that shows, and it's even really cool to have a chat today because I don't really reflect a lot on things, but there was a really big time there where I just had no fucking idea what I was going to do with my life. Like, and it's easy to look back now and go, oh, that was an easy thing because you forget about all those parts. But I remember those camps. I remember those transition camps. I went to two of them, delisting camps. And I remember sitting there, and your ego is something, it's a hard one. Like your ego, I found, is a really good thing sometimes because it makes you know what you deserve, and that entitlement. I think Chris Judd said this on one of my shows once. He said entitlement gets a really bad connotation with life, and people say, oh, if you're entitled, you shouldn't do this. But if you're entitled, if you've done the work, you should be entitled because you've put the time and work in. Yeah. Entitlement's only bad if you haven't done the work. And when he said that to me, that's when sort of things started changing around that period, being like, fuck this, like I am. I should be entitled now. I need to change my mindset to be more like, you fucking deserve this. You need to start going out and getting things, because I think for, the Australian culture sometimes is like, you can't say anything until you've done it. And I was like, well, I have done it, so I can do it.
I think it's talk about Australian culture. It's like tall poppy syndrome / fit in this box kind of thing. Yeah. And it's kind of cool whenever you actually have this experience where you're doing something that's totally outside the box. No one had done this before. So you kind of have full control and creativity over it. I mean, you would have been sitting there saying like, oh, well, who can I look at that has a podcast that's an ex-player? Or who's going into the media that's an ex-player? And like most people are going into media from the IFL, we're all doing statistical, analysis and saying like, this team plays this way and we're going to do this and that, where you're going, no, I'm just going to meet people and like, I'm going to name the show Dylan Friends.
Yeah,
I'm just going to have a whole bunch of mates on. We're just going to talk about their life.
The name didn't sort of take too long to come up with. It was pretty simple.
You say that,
process.
Mate. Look at this, the Mason Cox Show.
Yeah,
it took a long time to come up with that one too.
I think the quicker the better when it comes to names. But no, you're right. I think going back to that part before I said about with footballers and athletes and just people in general of maybe that are looked to be put on not a pedestal, but people think, oh, that's a cool thing. We're all human. And my biggest part was what I hated when I played footy was people, my mates would be like, oh, what's Mason Cox like? And I'm like, mate, he's the best bloke ever. Like, no, I don't like him. And I'm like,
I hate that.
And I'm like, well, you don't know him. Yeah. And then they go, oh, what's Dylan Buckley like? And they go, he looks like a legend. I go, no, he's actually the worst bloke on the list. Like, so for me, the show was all about going like, let's get these guys that I love and that I really respect and don't just like them for what they do, but like them for who they are. And that was another part that was really strong, and that's the concept really of the whole show, and that's why I enjoy doing it.
That's the beauty of it, I think, is you're humanizing these people that people put on a pedestal. And And it's kind of weird because in Australia, no one's, I guess, like on an international level, there's very minimal people on an international level that are known. And like we sometimes put these Australian athletes on this pedestal whenever like they go down the street and go have dinner just as though anyone else would, or go to the shops and get, their groceries just as anyone else would. And it's kind of weird to think that people like not necessarily idolize them, but just because they have this platform, it's as though, it's someone you can't like kind of find a middle ground and share experiences with. But one thing I think I've noticed in meeting people, I guess, that are higher up in society, whoever it might be, or kind of people with status or, have done some amazing things in life is you're just human. Well, I can talk about meeting Joe Biden, who's the president of the United States, or Tiger Woods. And it's like, we talked about the same thing that I would talk about with any Joe Bloke off like the street, just because that's, I don't know, you're all human at the end of the day. And it's cool. It's a cool thing I'm sure you would have experienced, I guess, with being able to interview people. But I'm also interested in kind of psychology around interviewing people, right? So you're very kind of humble, very kind of not necessarily quiet, but you wouldn't be like an extroverted person, I would say, in a sense of some people out there in the media. And you're kind of just quiet and calm nature about things, I think helps people open up quite a bit. Has that always been something you've had, or is it something you've had to work on as far as being able to, I guess, be on the other side of the mic, interviewing people and trying to bring out, I guess, personal stories from people and be able to, I guess, find a middle ground that you can connect with them on whenever you're podcasting?
Yeah, well, I think the funny thing about that is like I never studied journalism. I don't see myself as a journalist or anything like that. That's something that people study at. And for me, I don't even think that I interview people. I think that I just genuinely have a conversation, and that's what I love doing. Like I'm here, not here saying that a lot of work goes into things, because to be honest, sometimes I think the more I put into a show, the less results I get, because I try and push on certain things. But for me, honestly, I just try and have a chat with people. I have like 3 or 4 points that I'd love to touch on, and I'm always just so grateful for people for coming on and just interested. I think like if anyone wants to start a podcast, someone told me this once. It's like, don't be interesting, be interested, or maybe the other way around. Or don't be interesting, be interested. It's like be interested in other people, and I am. I love it. Like even when I was at Carlton, I used to have this really weird thing. I used to love going to those corporate days and talking to like the successful people, and they're like, "Oh, I do this," and I'm like, "But how? Like, how does that work?" Because I just don't get it. I didn't get it in my head. I was just like, I don't get how because you leave school, then what happens? Because I left school and I went straight to footy. So I'm like, what happened for you? Did you go to uni? Did you do this? And they go, I did this and I got this break. And I was like, yeah, then what happened? And then I'm like, then what happened? Like then, because I wanted to understand how it works. And even with, I'm in the real world now, and even when I was there, I still go to people, but what do you do? Like when people are at jobs, like who tells you what to do? You know what I mean? Like I don't know how that works. Yeah. Because I've always sort of worked.
The 9 to 5 doesn't exist for you.
Like how does that work? Yeah. Like I'm just interested in.
You've become your own boss essentially straight out of AFL. Really.
More so, just I'm interested in how people live their lives, especially because what's interesting to me might not be interesting to you, but what's interesting to you might not be interesting to me. So anyway, I love chatting with people, love just breaking things down, and I think for me, something that I've found was really hard about the whole like chatting with people thing. The only thing that I've probably worked on a bit, which, I hope people understand, that when I talk to people and bring myself into the story, sometimes I do that just to like let the guest know that they can tell a story about themselves. So if they're not opening up and they feel they don't want to talk too much about themselves, because it's really hard to tell your own story. You feel like I'm a bit of a flog here, like, telling my story. But if you tell a little story first, then they go, oh, I can tell stories. I'll tell a story. So that's just one thing that I've picked up, which has been really successful in the show.
Yeah. It's I'm reading a book at the moment called How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. I don't know if you ever heard.
I've heard of it.
Yeah, definitely get onto it if you haven't. And it talks about how to be interesting by people is to ask them questions. And it's not to tell people things, it's to actually ask people questions to try to get more out of them. Is there any books or anything that you've done research-wise? I mean, like, I think of this whole thing, right? So COVID for 2 years, we as a society of Australia have had zero interactions with people, right? So we have kind of taken a step back, I guess, in being able to grow as humans as far as that. And I think a lot of people, including myself, and I'm not sure if you felt the same, have struggled at times to, whenever we first came out, to have conversations with people. You go, geez, I'm a bit rusty in this. I can't really know what to say, what to talk about, like what's going on. I don't want to talk about COVID, but like somehow it comes up in every conversation type deal. Like, is that something so that you experience, one, and then two, do you have any advice for someone who maybe is not a great a great conversationalist, but wants to be better in that and improve in that aspect of life?
Definitely. I think the biggest thing we've already touched on is just ask questions. You do not have to talk. Like, people love, without knowing, people love talking about themselves. Like, not necessarily just on a podcast, but if someone comes up and they're really interested in what you have to say, you love giving that information. So I think people that might be struggling or aren't as confident in public situations, just ask questions and just listen to what people are saying. There's always a question to follow up with. Oh, I did this. How'd you do that?
Yeah.
Why'd you do that? Like who, what, when, where, why. They're like we learn that in primary school. It's so sort of in our brains, but we sort of forget it when we're in that pressure. So I think those is a really big way to do so. For me, like during COVID, that honestly kept me sane. And I think to this day, one of the biggest blessings for me, and I only realized this 6 months ago, was that for me, like I love, trying to be mindfulness, and I love, trying to be the best version of myself I can be. And someone said to me the other day, they're like, "Oh, what do you do to do that?" And I was like, "Oh, fuck, I've tried so many things. I've tried breath work. I've tried this stuff." And don't get me wrong, I love that stuff, but I've struggled to be consistent with it. And then I thought the only thing that I've been consistent with for 3 years is an hour of a week. I turn my phone off and I sit down with a guest and I talk to them, and I'm so entrenched in the conversation and I learn from them. And when I'm in that conversation, I'm not thinking about anything else. So I was like, I've been doing mindfulness. I've been doing this.
That is your mindfulness.
You know what I mean? That is it's literally just having conversations with people without any distraction. Like, it's nearly the best gift I can ever have to myself, that without even knowing, it's a job, but like I sit back and I'm like, fuck, I can't believe I'm actually lucky enough to do this. Yeah.
Yeah. That's amazing, man. It's great to hear whenever someone finds their passion and then makes it a career and knows it. And that's something I've been able to very quickly get off you, is the fact that you do love your job.
Yeah.
I wouldn't even call it a job, to be honest. Like, it's more of your, I guess, industry that you're working in. You just love, and you absolutely love it. You've got your different podcasts, and you shout them out.
Dylan Friends, List Cloggers. We've started a couple other ones. One's called 200 Plus. You've got to get on that one soon. The big boys of the competition. Bromley Lynch, another couple twins from Ballarat, started a show. We did one with Spotify, Caden McDonald. God, I can't forget any here.
Producer's busy.
Yeah, we're busy.
Is busy.
I hope I haven't forgotten any.
Who's your favorite? I know this is tough to guess. Who's your favorite guest you've ever had on the podcast?
Besides you?
That's not out yet.
I'd have to say a couple guests, two really stick. It's so hard to. I'm going to say three, but three guests. One, because it changed the game for me, and it changed what.
In what sense?
One was Zach Dawson. So it changed the game because he came on and we had this it was the first time where we had this like the most raw and authentic conversation, and he opened up about his story in like AFL and, how he was treated. I'm not sure if you're familiar with his story, but, he'd been to Hawthorn and had 8 goals kicked on him in his first game. So he sort of had this reputation already, then went to St Kilda and had a couple of things happen there, and then he went to Fremantle and just got always trolled online, but was the most beautiful person in the world. And when I was talking before about that anecdote of like, people go, what's he like? He's a flog, but really he's the best bloke in the world. And like, I just think that whole chat I'd never had so many messages being like, I am the biggest fuckwit ever. Totally change my opinion on this person. And that's when I was like, yes, like that's awesome.
That's the point of this.
That's the point. Yeah, that was a point. Emma Murray was another one who I just love chatting with her. She's just an incredible person. She's so authentic. She's so real. And selfishly, like even if the mic wasn't on, it's just like my favorite time to have a chat with her. It's just really, really awesome. And then
to give a bit of a background, she is.
To give a background, she's a high performance mindfulness. Yeah. So she basically is like meditation, mindfulness, visualization. She even does some like hypnotherapy, all these sorts of things.
She's in the club once. She did some stuff with us.
Did she work with Collingwood?
Yeah. She did for a little bit. Yeah.
I think she worked. She worked with Collingwood, and then someone got rid of her, and then she went to Richmond, and then blew up. So I think Collingwood missed out a bit. On that one. And then another one that I just really love, this guy's story, was a guy named Nick Stone, who is actually in the US, in your territory. He was playing for Hawthorn, and his career didn't really work out what he wanted to, but then he went straight into like investment banking, moved over to the US, and now is the founder of Bluestone Lane. He owns one of the biggest, they're wanting to rival Starbucks in the US, and just loved his story, loved his outlook on things, and it made me really question. I think like when you go, I heard this thing that he said, and then I'd heard it since, and it was like when you say like, what's your goals? And you say, think big. Okay, so think about that now when I say to you, what's your goals? Think big.
Yeah.
So you got something in your mind?
Yeah.
Okay, then I go think bigger.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And then I go
There's
think,
no limit.
Then I go
There's
think,
no
then
ceiling
I go
anymore.
think bigger again, and you go, okay. So like, it just made me go, oh my God, like I'm capping myself so much.
Yeah.
Like here I'm thinking I have a cool podcast. Why not the best podcasts in the world? Like I know that's like
in the world.
That's a one that's thinking, but the other things in my life as well. It's not just like that. I think we can really cap ourselves, and until we see other people do shit, we don't know what's real. And what he's done has been like, fucking hell, why can't I do this?
Yeah.
So love that.
His whole family's like that. I actually did some New York City Marathon training with his brother.
Oh wow,
Andrew.
Yeah.
Last off season.
Yeah.
He was well ahead of me. I'll say that. But
he's good.
The whole family's pretty amazing.
Yeah,
man.
they are.
And it's so cool to see an Australian company expand like that in the US. Like I feel like all Australian brands want to like break it in America, because there's so much more, I guess, media attention there and so much more population and everything else. It's always a goal to be able to make it in America, and he's smashing it, absolutely smashing it
So
over there.
cool.
It's cool to see an Australian do well. It really is.
Oh, it is. Yeah, but when you chat with him, and I know you've crossed paths with him as well, but just the most humble guy. Like even after it, like he's so busy, and he's like hung around for like an hour just chatting, and I was just like, you can go, man. Like I felt bad. I'm like, mate, I want to keep you here, but like I know you've got places to be. Like you can, it's all good. But yeah, just a good dude. I've got so much time for him, and I really want to get over to the States soon and do some cool things over there as well. So good contacts.
I'll be there in September, October, maybe.
There you go.
Maybe do the podcast there.
Yeah, we're taking the rolling van over there.
Take the rolling van. Just take it on the boat. Get over it.
That's supposed to be the floating van, I reckon, by then.
Yeah.
Oh, that was a really bad gag. Yeah. That was shit. That sucked.
Well,
that sucked.
I'll ask another question on the podcast.
Okay.
I want to know. This is a bit, I guess, controversial. Maybe is like,
Right,
what's the
go for it.
conversation you had to cut out of a podcast that was hilarious, questionable, maybe just TMI, with a guest that you just go, this is maybe too juicy. This is maybe too juicy for the public.
Oh.
I don't know about this.
There's so many, man. There's
Because
so
I feel
many.
like in a podcast, people don't realize is you have maybe like an hour and a half chat, right? And then you realize the podcast might be cut down to 45 minutes or 30 minutes, whatever it might be. And there's so much you cut out. And it's one of those things I think like I've done podcasts and I've sit there and gone and done an interview with someone, right? And then after you go, oof, maybe I shouldn't have said that, you know? And then I go, I hate to be the guy because I know this might be your kind of headline.
Yeah.
But you're going to have to take that out. And he's like, oh, no, are you serious? I'm like, yeah, you're going to have to, brother.
Yeah. No, that's fine. Like that does happen a bit. But to be honest, I think for me, and this is something where I pride myself on, is at the end of the day, like I don't underestimate, the role I have and the trust that people have in me to have, to share their story. And it's something that I'm so grateful for that I'd never want to jeopardize. And there's been times where like even I've taken stuff out when they haven't even asked me to. Yeah. Because I'm like, I don't want to grab news stories. And I'm like, that can come back. If you said that can come back, and someone might interpret that the wrong way, and then it blows up. This was on Dylan Friends, and I'm not here. I don't want to do that. I don't want to break stories. And then it's like, well, if I ever fucked over one player or one person, no one will ever come on again. So, I'm not there to do that stuff. Like, nothing really springs to mind because we do leave a lot of it in. But like, there's been a few things where some players have said stuff, and nothing like bad, but just more like, I just don't think
might not make you look the best.
Just doesn't make you look the way you want. It came off. Like they're all good intentions, but sometimes if you don't tell the story around the situation that well, it just doesn't look that good. So I've definitely taken a few things out for players' benefits.
We'll see how much of the podcast I did with you gets taken out.
Like an hour and a half chats down to like 10 minutes.
Episode,
10 minutes.
Well, another thing I want to talk to you about is you're a big advocate for mental health.
Yep.
Tackle Your Feelings. You've done stuff with Movember you've been involved with. Tell me exactly, I guess, your experience with it, if you feel comfortable enough talking about that, and then kind of how you've got involved with these different charities and, where you see it kind of going in the future.
Yeah, sure. So I think I've always been really, really into this space, and I never knew why until probably recently. But yeah, doing work with like Tackle Your Feelings and Movember, I always wanted to raise money. And I think subconsciously I knew but never wanted to admit it. But my old man sort of he had some suffering with mental health and alcohol addiction, and I've sort of grown up with that with him like that. And I love him, love him to death, but I just knew there was something not right, and it probably took me a long time to work that out and have those conversations and get on the front foot with him about that, which has been incredible. He's never been better, he's never been happier, he's been off alcohol for over 12 months, over 12 months now, which has been huge. But I think, now reflecting on that, I look back and I go, fuck, everything I was doing was like in subconsciously being like, look, Dad, I'm doing this. You can always come talk to me, sort of thing. So that was like funny to realize, because I think like I was like, what, why was I interested in this? But I think it was more just to show that, like, to my friends and family and friends, sorry, was like, if anyone was ever struggling, they could come talk to me, because they go, oh, Dill does stuff with Movember, he does stuff with Tackle Your Feelings. I could go talk to him. Whereas realistically, it's probably the other way. I should have just gone up to them first and been like, what's going on? I can help you. But I was probably trying to take a bit of a different way and like do all the work. And if someone wanted to approach me, they could. Yeah. But that's the thing with, mental health and these conversations, is they're not comfortable chats. Even now, I speak about this shit all the time, and you still get awkward. You still get that little frog in your throat when you bring it up. But that's why it is so important to chat about. I think it's silly to think that, we don't all experience it on some level. Especially with Tackle Your Feelings, we talk about, and that's a business I do a lot of work with. We go out to local community clubs and talk about mental health and how to deal with it, and we talk about a continuum. And there's 3 levels. There's thriving, coping, and struggling. And it's like you're on that continuum all the time. And just because you're struggling at the moment doesn't mean you can't be thriving as well. Like, you move up and down, and just because you're thriving doesn't mean that one day you might be struggling. Like, you've got to be able to bounce back and forward. So yeah, I think just like that education piece around it, upskilling myself on it. Like, I love, we're all not immune. Like I have bad days. Everyone has bad days. But yeah, I think it's just such an important piece, and I just always wanted to know that if someone was struggling, I'd be there for them to reach out to, which I can still get better at, but I'm doing my best.
Yeah, it's a constant, I think, thing for all of us to put time and effort into, and it is. I think it's pretty amazing in this country. One thing I've learned is we're very, I guess, like open about it comparatively to other countries. I know back in the US, like I wouldn't have the conversations I would have in Australia.
Yeah,
and I think there's a lot of media and attention that goes into mental health here. And don't get me wrong, there's always room for improvement. Yeah. But I think it's pretty amazing in Australia that there's these initiatives that kind of happen, whether it be Are You OK Day and things like that, where it's very much in front of you of saying, nah, check in on your mates. And there's been people that have unfortunately passed away in the media and things along those lines, where like Triple M and radio does a minute of silence and, for certain days and things like that, where you wouldn't really get that anywhere else, I feel like. And there's this amazing part of this Australian culture, I think, that really is look after your mates. And there is a bit that's like, let's all have a laugh, and, it's Australian ways to take the piss out of each other, I guess, per se. But there's also this really genuine and humanizing like section of Australian culture that's becoming bigger and bigger and bigger, that really does look after each other. And it's, even looking at your podcast, mate, like just having those stories of people opening up and telling their experiences might, be tough for them, but that also might open up an opportunity for someone else to say, look, Zach's gone on his podcast and told it, like, why can't I tell my closest friend this experience I might have had?
Oh, and they're the best, and I'm sure you'll experience that soon when you get humming with the show. But like, I think anything, not even, they don't have to be like the darkest times, even the happy, like being able to give people just like laughter and content and relatability, I suppose, is like something that I never take for granted. And it's something that, when you get a message and someone says like, that made my day, you're just like, how, like how, and those, it is really special. It is really, I'm a very emotional person, But there's the hard times at the end of the year when we do like this, the BNF.
Yeah.
And we do like the best and fairest of the year, and people sort of write in their feedback and like.
What's one of the best messages?
Oh
you've
man,
ever
I
got?
couldn't even say it. Like,
Couldn't even say it?
I couldn't even say it.
Really?
Like more just I could say it, but I would just like
Just break down.
Yeah, it's just crazy.
I think it is. There's some things you've covered on the podcast, man, that you've really shown a light on the ability to open up to other people, and
but it's know what, it's actually it's a skill, as in like it's not something that you're good at. Like I was terrible at this. I was so bad, and to be honest, I'm still not very good at it. But like you practice it. It's you. The more you ask your mates how you're going, the more you are vulnerable, the more you do open up and talk about hard things, the more you hit that conversation on the head instead of ignoring it. Or that is all skills. Like the more you do that, the easier it gets. So like, I remember in my podcast, the first one I ever did, I had this psychologist on, and I was like, oh my God, everyone's gonna think I'm the biggest loser ever.
Really?
Like I couldn't even say mental health. It was the first time anyone had like this was very early on.
Yeah, okay.
And then, 2 years later, I'm talking about my own struggles, my dad's thing. I'm like, fuck, it's a skill.
Yeah.
You get better at it. Like you're not gonna, the first time you maybe do something, you're not gonna go straight into the deep end. You can
Besides
work.
the show,
you
obviously.
can, of course, you can work into things, and I think that's what people. A really good message, and something that I've learned maybe is that you can work at this stuff just because you might not think you're good at vulnerability at the moment. Like you can do it.
Yeah, and I think it's a bit of advice for people out there that maybe, I guess, feel uncomfortable in having that initial conversation with others and
it's so uncomfortable.
opening up. It can be, and it is like everyone, but you come to realize that everyone has their own struggles. Like it's not, you're not alone.
No,
like,
and do you know how good you feel? Like, and you would know this, but like I always related to this. For example, I'm sure you had a lot of better relationship with coaches than me, but when you're like out at the club and you're like, oh, fuck, I need to go chat to the coach today. Like, fucking hell, this is going to be an absolute nightmare. And you put it off and then you go, I'll do it tomorrow. And then you put it off and you sleep on it. And then you go in the next day and finally the coach sees you and like, hey, come have a chat. And then you have the chat and you're like, oh, that was awesome.
That wasn't too bad.
That was really good. That was really good. I should have done that earlier. And it's like, that's the same with like any conversation. Like, it's so much easier than you actually think it's going to be. But it's still not comfortable, but you're so much happier that you had it and you never regret having the conversation.
Yeah, it clears your mind. I think sometimes it's a stress and you overplay it in your head of like, oh, maybe that he's going to say this or someone's going to say this and it's going to be, I don't know how I'm going to react. I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And then you kind of have the conversation and go, oh, that's how he feels.
Yeah.
That's how I feel. This is the direction we're going in. Like, this is so much clearer.
Yeah,
like, why didn't we do this like months ago?
I
Like,
love torturing myself with different outcomes.
but I think it is putting yourself in maybe an awkward scenario to give you more clarity, or even, you never know what a conversation will do for someone.
Yeah.
I've had people I know just having a conversation with them on the side of a footy field about just life. And they're like, man, like made my life, like made my week, made my month. And I'm like, I'm just a broke athlete. It's just like here, having a great time. And like, it's amazing, I guess, what little things you can do that'll make someone's day, make someone's like week or whatever it might be that, sometimes we take it for granted, I guess, of just, I guess, how influential we can actually be in a positive light. Oh,
100%. Yeah. It's something that I definitely don't take for granted.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I want to move a bit of a sidetrack. Your hobbies. You love a bit of golf.
Oh man, I got
You love a bit of golf. Now, I've had a few questions come in about you, and I want to know a few things. One, what is your handicap? I had to learn what this is because I'm getting into golf. I'm just getting into golf recently. And
so do you know what it is?
Yeah, it's like how many strokes over par you essentially are on 18,
I'll
right?
explain it because it's taken me ages to be able to even work this out myself. So I hope this makes sense. But say, how do I explain this? Okay. Every hole you score, right? If you hit a par, you get 2 points for every hole. So if you hit 4 shots, this is in Stableford, by the way.
Okay, yep.
Stableford, you get 2 points. So if you hit 4 shots, you get 2 points. If you hit 3 shots, you have 2 points. So someone off scratch, they're off 0.
Yeah.
They have to go around and hit pars the whole way around the course.
18 holes.
18 holes, 2 points on each, then they hit 36 points.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's hitting to your handicap. So someone off 19, off a handicap, they get 1 extra stroke on every hole. So if there's
bogeying every hole.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if you bogey every hole, you'd get 2 points. But if you par it, you get 3 because you're hitting 1 under your handicap.
Yeah.
So if you're off 36, you get 2 shots every hole. So I'm off 21 at the moment, basically. So I get 1 shot a hole on everything except Sorry, I'm off 20, so two other ones I get 2 points. I don't know if I've just confused you even more about that, but I'm more saying
I think what I got out of that is you average almost a bogey plus a little bit here on every hole or two.
Pretty much.
Pretty much. Two on the hole.
Pretty much makes sense.
Which is pretty good.
Yeah, it's not that good. It's not that good.
Because I've actually went golfing recently, and I've had this story told to me. I was with my golf partner was there, and he was telling a story about he actually ran into you, and he said you were golfing with Tom Mitchell.
Okay.
And he was telling the story, and I'm terrible at golf, and I almost hit someone in the face and in the head. You yell out 4, and it was a par 3.
That's what you normally do.
Yeah. I learned that very quickly.
I've been hit before, by the way.
Have you been hit?
Yeah.
Where at?
At Ivanhoe.
Head?
Ivanhoe. No, in the shoulder. In the deltoid.
Didn't see it coming?
No.
Nothing was said?
No, it was the people behind us. I was like, surely they just didn't hit. And I turn around, all of a sudden just bang, straight in the shoulder. I picked up their ball and just piffed it into the trees.
I would have just sat there and waited for them. Just said, come and get it.
I was so angry.
Anyway, so the story.
I was some farbers and walked off.
Yeah, far out. You're too nice of a guy. I would be the guy that just be like, you're going to have to face me.
There might have been some other things said, but we'll move on.
Real golf etiquette. Anyway, I was on this story is I was on playing with this guy, and you were apparently playing with Tom Mitchell. And my partner, the guy I was playing with, he was playing with his partner at the time. And apparently he whiffed one and hit Tom Mitchell in the foot. Yeah. And he knew who you were. He knew who Tom Mitchell was. I think, yeah, the calf, whatever it is. And Tom's going, oh, calf. Oh, who the F? Who the F hit that young ball? And he's going, shit. I've got to go get my ball. I've got to go pick this thing up. Now, what actually was said if you get hit by a ball, Tom Mitchell in the leg, this is probably mid-season where he's still going to have to play. What were the choice of words he decided to give to this fella?
Do you know what I actually said?
No, I actually don't know the rest of the story, so I want to hear it.
But I know one thing. If you're playing at Burnley Golf Course in Richmond, you're pretty much silly to think you're not going to cop a golf ball in the head. It's pretty much the mecca of amateur golfers. So go there at your own risk. And that's probably what we, it was our own fault really at the end of the day that he got hit there. But I just remember we were walking and we're on this one hole, and the funny thing was about your mate, we were probably I'm going to say 45 metres away from where the green was. So I don't know what sort of golfer this bloke is, but it was so far away from any other green. There's other parts on a golf course where you're this could be a risky spot.
Somewhat of a crossover. But
we're genuinely on another fairway, so probably like 50 metres lateral, and then another 50 metres in front of his. So he's pretty much hit it 50 metres wide and 50 metres too long over another fairway, and just smashed Tom in the back of the calf. And I remember just going, oh my God, what the fuck just happened? I have no idea. He's in pain. It obviously hurts. And the guy just came up and said sorry. And I was just I was just amazed. I was like, maybe just yell 4 next time, man. It's pretty dangerous. But yeah, I think it was, you're never aiming for someone, and I don't, no offense to that bloke, but I don't think he could hit anyone even if he was aiming for it. Let alone the middle of his club. So anyway, it happens to the best of us. I've nearly hit people.
Have you actually ever hit anyone?
I've never hit anyone, but I've nearly hit people. You nearly hit people all the time, but you just got to give a good 4 yell. Yeah. Give them the best chance to get out of the way. I don't think there was one yelled that day, but it was funny.
I was golfing with my friend the other day, and he said something that stuck with me. He said, golf is a game that's created because men feel awkward asking others to go for a walk.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
We have to have an activity that we're doing, but really it's just us catching up and having a little chat and being in nature and going for a walk. And then we hit a few golf balls here and there, whatever. Yeah. But it's more of just we're just catching up.
I will say though, when, my personality is, how do I say this? Very addictive personality. Okay. So we came in here today, Roland Studios. There's these boom arms. I can guarantee as soon as I leave, I'm going to buy 4 of these. Because I'm I'm
inspired.
I need them. As soon as I can't stop thinking about it. I'm not even joking. I'm still thinking about it now. These cameras, I had to go buy a few cameras of those cameras because it's just as soon as I see it, I'm like, no, I need to do that. With golf, it's probably the worst it's ever been.
Your clubs top of the line?
Clubs. I wouldn't say top of the line. I've got a great partnership with Callaway, actually. Shout out to Callaway if they're listening. So beautiful clubs there, Michael Gorn and the team down there at Callaway. Nice and fitted. But my bag, I love the pins. I love having nice tees. I love having good ball markers. I love having, a nice golf kit as well. And yeah, it's just weird. I just love the whole vibe of it. I'm a member of this club now. I love being a part of a club. it's fair to say I'm very materialistic, but in a good way, if that makes sense. Like it makes me happy. So it's like
100%.
not, yeah.
You're the guy I worry
Sounds
about
bad.
whenever I get out of the car. He's got all the gear and everything else.
Oh,
I'm going,
all the
this
gear, no
guy's
idea.
going to absolutely murder me.
No,
He's going to
I
be following
suck.
me around, chasing all my shots.
No, I
every single
suck.
day.
Yeah, I make up. Well, my old man used to always say to me, if you can't play like a footballer, at least look like one.
Yeah.
So it's a bit with the golf as well. It's like if you can't hit the golf ball that way, at least look good while you're doing it.
Yeah,
so I like to think that I've got some cool kits to wear out there.
That's so good. And you've also ran the Melbourne Marathon.
I did
recently. Congratulations. That's actually so impressive to run a marathon. Like I have so much respect for anyone that can stick to that kind of training and run it.
Yeah.
What was the experience like, man? Like did you get to a certain point and you hit a wall? Like I had a friend that ran the New York City Marathon, like I was saying, and I've got him probably at 38, 40K mark, and he looked like death.
Yeah.
Like looked like proper death in the hole, really struggling every step. And it was hilarious for me as just someone who usually works out for a living to get to see someone else go through the hole for once.
Oh, it sucked, I'll be honest. Like it was a really hard. It's probably the hardest thing I've ever done. But
really,
funnily, when we talk about before about the cameras and the golf, like running was another one of those things. Like I had to get the runners, the socks, all those things, and like that was a part of the fun for me to have those types of things. But yeah, basically it started as a little competition. We're doing that with Liz Clogger's producer, Sam and Dan Gorringe. We were like, oh, let's do the marathon. And I was like, okay, cool. And as soon as it's, it turns into a competition and you're competing with each other, and it was really fun. But it got, for me, just one of those things that I really, really got into. And it was when everything was closed in lockdown. So, I was just running. And I don't know about you, but before playing, finishing footy, I had not even been for a run since, right?
Really?
And even before that, the longest I'd ever ran, I honestly think was probably 3Ks, as in like the 3K time trial. Okay. And then once when I was in Berlin, I did a 6K run. And I was like, oh my God, I'm going to have the best year ever. Like, I remember just doing a 6K run. I was like, fuck, I'm going to be the fittest bloke in the world. Like, next Tom Skelly, here I go. Anyway, so when I finished, and the challenge, like, I think the beauty of running is, which I really need to get back into, was you have that thing where you go, all right, I'm going to do 5Ks today. And then next time you go 6Ks. Yeah. And you're like, all right, I'm going to do 10. Then you do 10, you're like, oh, that was cool. I'm going to do 15. Yeah. Okay. And then you do 15, then you do 20, and then you go, this is cool, I can do this. But it's a scary story when you're talking about the hitting the wall. I was actually running around here. So I did the Capital City Trail. Yeah, okay, yeah. And this was like 2 weeks before we finished. And you have to tick off all these like milestones. So I did shouldn't have done this, but we did it in 8 weeks training. 8 weeks training block. And I was like, to be honest, I haven't ran since because my body's just still dead. But we did this Capital City Trail one day. And I remember my mate was doing a half marathon. So he did like 20 with me. And then he stopped and got the bike. But then he couldn't find me. Long story short, when you get to, I think it's like, the longest I'd ran up to there was like 22 or something like that. Yeah. And then after that, once you get to 26Ks, you really need to get your fuel in. Yeah. You just need to start taking gels because your body really starts to shut down. Yeah. And I had no idea. I was like, oh, okay, cool, whatever. Never been there. Yeah, okay. Never been to that stage. And I remember running around this trail and I remember like really starting to, and I'm not a big eater, but I remember running, and I'm actually a vegetarian as well. And I remember running and going like, holy fuck, like if there was a burger in front of me right now, like a beef burger, I would literally demolish it. Like that, like as I was running, I was that hungry. And my mind was starting to play tricks, and I was like, that was weird. Anyway, kept running. Then I started getting like really bad like pains, not pains, but like really that empty feeling, you're just running on empty. And then I started getting a bit dizzy and like I was like, oh, this is weird. I'm like, oh, there's not long to go. Anyway, I was like, fuck, I'm just going to get to 30. I'll get to 30 and I'll stop because I was going to try and do like 35. I didn't stop, had no fuel, no muesli bars, like anything. I don't think I had a banana for breakfast. So it was just ridiculous. Anyway, I stopped and got to 30Ks and literally just like collapsed. And I was like on the ground by myself, like as in collapsed, like just down, like I wasn't out or anything. But I remember just I could hardly get up. I couldn't even get my shoes off. And I thought, I was so disorientated of like where I was. I thought I was close back to my car, but I ended up being like another 3Ks away. So I literally just had to walk and I was like just so drained, no phone on me or anything, like because I wasn't running. I thought I was where I was. I was trying to like get a car to like pick me up and take me back, but I couldn't even speak. I didn't even know where I was. So long story short, finally got back to like the studio where I work and went downstairs, ordered some breakfast, had a smoothie. But it probably took me nearly 3 or 4 hours to like feel good again.
Wow.
So that was nearly the best thing that happened, because I did that and then went into the race 2 weeks later, really shitting myself, but also going like, all right, you've got to fuel. So like from there, I started like taking all the gels, and I literally ate so much during the marathon that I like put on weight and drank.
During the marathon,
it was
you put on
weird.
weight?
It was weird. Like I'd put on so much, like snakes, lollies, these carb gels. I was
Did you
drinking.
have like the little like fanny pack?
No, I
kind of
had
thing,
these. I
or
was
did you
wearing
have the-
tights, and I had just all these pockets. And then one of the coolest things about the marathon, not to talk about this for an hour, but is the fact that like it's one of those things as well. I was saying I was an emotional person, but you're sort of there and you're so tired running, and there's so many people, and they're handing out like lollies and Gatorades, and you're just like, thank you.
Yeah.
You're just like, thank you so like you know when you're like tired, then like you're like you're like oh, I'm just so tired. And I remember running, just being like, oh, like crying running sort of thing, and then people are so nice, and you're just like, oh, this is the best.
Yeah.
So it was a really good experience. I'd recommend it to anyone. I probably won't be doing another one for a while, but I would say go for it.
I'd recommend you do the New York City Marathon. Maybe
that's
that's
one
it.
I
Maybe
would
the next
do.
scoop.
Yeah,
Dylan Buckley's doing the
I
New
would
York
love
City
to do
Marathon.
that. I'd get up for that one.
Because it is cool. Like, I went there last year, and like you said, like whenever you get to the end, there's bands playing the
Yeah,
whole
it
way,
was
man.
cool.
Like it's a whole ordeal.
Yeah.
And it's cool to see like so many people. You have no idea who they are, just supporting random people running down the road. They're
Yeah.
just an absolute shambles trying to get across this line.
I must say though, people went to like an after party. I went for one beer and literally had to get picked up because I was in so like
Couldn't
my
stand.
legs and knees and back. I was like, I can't have a conversation with you right now. I was in so much pain,
Jeez.
so I didn't even get to enjoy it really.
So you got to the marathon, you've
Yeah.
gone for a run, and then you've
Yeah.
said in
Oh, I
8 weeks.
went
I'm
home.
actually baffled that you've done this in 8 weeks.
Yeah, 8 weeks. I had so many
How'd
people.
the other
man.
boys fare?
Goz got it done, which was even a bigger surprise because he did not do half the training that I did.
Yeah, okay.
And Sam, our producer, unfortunately, he
make it.
he hurt himself halfway through. He still finished, but he walked. Oh. So I don't know. Did he finish? I'm not sure.
Did he get the medal? Well, you got the medal, I guess. He's
He got
fine.
the medal, but I don't know.
Does that hang on the mantle?
Does that count? I'm not sure. I'm not sure. We often
You
debate
finish
whether
after dark. I don't think
know.
it counts.
I don't know. Yeah, I'm not sure. I'll leave that for him to decide.
Yeah, beautiful, man. Well, it's been so good getting to know you, man. I really appreciate you coming on the show. It's
Thank you.
It's been awesome. First podcast in the books, man, and it's a credit to you. You've been able to just be able to manipulate a career in the IFL to be the media personality you are now, and to have your own production company and everything else. It's a credit to you, man. You should be extremely proud of yourself.
Thank you, brother.
And
No, I appreciate
it's
it.
an absolute honor to have you on and have you as the first guest on the podcast.
Mate, it's an honour. First guest. I can't believe it. Mate, you're going to do good things. As I said today, we were lucky enough to record another pod, and you got just an incredible story, and one of my favourites. So blessed to know you, blessed to be on the podcast, and can't wait to see what's next for both of us.
You're the favorite podcast I've had so far. So.
yeah, very good. Yeah, I like
Too
that.
easy.
That
Well,
was
thanks
shit.
for coming
That
on, man.
sucked.
And
That sucked.
all the best.
See you, mate. See you, mate.
What a great chat with Dylan Buckley, an amazing human, and so privileged for him to jump on and open himself up like he did. He's an amazing person that's done some amazing things in life, and I'm so very fortunate to have him as the first episode of the Mason Cox Show, and we're so grateful to have you as a listener. So, as mentioned before, like, share, comment, all the great things, and we'll have plenty more content coming to you soon.